Overload potions are a staple for RuneScape PVMing. There are also Supreme Overloads, which are never talked about in my experience, and Elder Overloads, which I've only ever seen used by the most top-tier PVMers against the most difficult bosses. I wanted to find out if they're really worth it and when each overload is really worth it over another one. So I ran some tests on 3 bosses using each of the 3 overloads to find out, and now I want to share what I found with you. Good day, everybody. So the reason I make this video in the first place is out of genuine curiosity of how much each type of overload is better than the previous one. If you don't already know, overloads, regular overloads, boost all your combat stats by the amount that extreme potions give, which when your stats are at level 99, the maximum boost you can get is a plus 17 and stays there for 6 minutes. Supreme overloads boost all your stats when at level 99 by a max of 19. And likewise, Elder Overloads can give you a max boost of plus 19 when all your stats are level 99. So each overload gives basically a plus 2 maximum bonus over the previous tier. To me, it doesn't sound like a lot. Maybe the difference between a regular overload and an Elder Overload, which is a plus 4 difference, maximum difference in stat boost. Maybe it makes a big difference, maybe not. I didn't know, so that's why I wanted to test this. Because I am a fan of simplicity and not overcomplicating things, and Elder Overloads take a lot more time than regular overloads to make and are a lot more complicated. Really just time-wise. They're not that much more complicated actually, but I don't like doing herb lore. I know I'm playing on an iron now mainly, but I still just don't like doing herb lore. So I want to partially run these tests to justify using overloads for absolutely everything as opposed to Elder Overloads, but I'm curious to see if I get proven wrong. So that's the background of why this video exists. So before we jump right into the boss testing results and how everything went with each type of overload, I would like to walk you through my testing setup and to go over some things with my gear and setup that might stand out to players as a little bit off or suboptimal. So I want to address that before we start anything. But if you have no patience for that or just don't really care, I have time-stamped this video, so you can skip to whichever boss or part of the video interests you the most. Alright, regarding my setup, there are 2 main things to note. 1, this is an Iron Man, and And number 2, I am not using gear switches, and I am using very basic ability rotations with only a little bit of manual input. I am using melee for all these tests because it is by far my highest DPSing style on this account, and melee also allows for the Scrimshaw Vampirism, and I am using Cinderbanes for 2 of the bosses that are poisonable with a Blood Reaver for a lot of damage. I have made a testing video in the past. It was on tank versus power armor, and I also used melee for that, and in that video I kept the damage boosting gear to a minimum in order to keep the test fair in a sense and limited to only influence from power or tank armor. But in this case, I held no bars, or wait, pulled out all the stops? What's the expression? It doesn't matter. I used all my best gear and all my best DPS options I have. Because if we're going to be talking about overloads, and Elder Overloads especially, only PVMers with really good gear and high DPS are going to be interested in this, so I want my test to reflect that. Another thing to note, because this is an Iron Man, my melee abilities are actually quite limited. I don't have any of the Dragonkin Laboratory codexes yet, so no Greater, Barge, Fury, or Flurry. It doesn't really matter because as long as my ability rotation is the same for all bosses tested, everything kind of comes out the same, and the only difference is which overload is used. My core setup consists of the Abyssal Scourge and Jaws of the Abyss for lots of extra damage and lots of extra adrenaline. Masterwork for power armor along with Cinderbanes where applicable on 2 of the 3 bosses that are poisonable, and some small variations for each boss that I'll go over as we get to that boss. My ability rotation is very basic, and the only 2 abilities that I am manually using for this test are Berserk and the Zook Overpower. This is for 2 reasons. Firstly, my PVMing ability is just not really there yet to worry about doing any more manual work than that. I'm kind of just working up to that still. And B, I didn't want to get too crazy manual with my rotations because it'll be harder to keep the tests consistent that way. It was a little bit difficult even to keep my kills consistent and keep my rotations the same, even with Berserk and Overpower on manual, because there are some times where I messed up the timing of Overpower or whatnot. I found that I was able to for 90 or 95% of the kills, keep it pretty consistent, but that's the reason I'm not doing anything more manual or more switch-scapey than that. Okay, I don't think I missed anything. Oh, I missed one thing. One of the relics I am using, archaeology relics, is Persistent Rage. And this is to make sure that I can stay in a boss instance and replenish my adrenaline to 100% pretty much every time before every single kill. So I can start every single kill with full adrenaline and all abilities available for the same rotation each and every single kill. That is very important for integrity of testing. Okay, without further ado, let's get into the test results. The bosses I chose to test on are Vindicta, the Magister, and Kerapac. I have different reasons for testing on each of these, and I'll go over that with each one. Starting with Vindicta. So this is normal mode Vindicta, and I chose her because this is a mid-level boss in normal mode that still has relatively high defense. You can still splash even at higher levels with higher level gear, but otherwise is kind of a DPS dump once you have the level of gear that I have, which is not the greatest. I mean, I've seen some YouTubers do Vindicta normal mode in like 16 seconds or under that. Definitely not there, but still, my kill times before this were hovering at around 1 minute with casual playthroughs, and a bit faster than that if I really try harder. So I actually broke some records here. Part of that was thanks to the new overloads, since I never use Supremes or Elders, but yeah, let's check out what happened. Here are the results, and this is how I'm going to lay them out for each boss. So I have 10 kills of each boss with each type of overload, and here you can see the kill times for each run, and at the bottom you can see the average of all the kill times as well as the fastest and the slowest. You can see a not too surprising progression of faster kill times as I use better and better overloads. Nothing too crazy, but it did jump up quite a bit in that, well, let's go put it like this. When I use the Supreme overloads versus regular overloads, the difference was pretty marginal, like 0.22% increase in average kill times, which is almost nothing, but the average kill times increased by 2 seconds, from 53 seconds to 51 seconds. Doesn't seem like a lot, but that is a 3.8% difference, which is actually pretty substantial statistically. So, yeah, if you have the money for it and you're grinding Vindicta for the log or whatever, Elder Overloads might get you there 4% faster, is the takeaway from this. I also did a side experiment with here that I've been curious of for a while, and I only did this one with Vindicta because I think it was only worth it here, and that I also tested extremes versus all these things. So what I did was I just took 1 dose of extreme attack and extreme strength, and then I let it run down as far as it could go until I started to see a difference. So you can see I actually only got to 7 kills, and then there was a mix of, I think my aura ran out, or my familiar, or whatever, something ran out, and it wasn't worth it to redo that for just the last 3 kills, and I just moved on to the next round of testing. So I did see at kill number 7 that the kill time already increased pretty substantially. It's only 1 kill, so it's not a lot of evidence, but at that point, by kill number 7 with an extreme, that means my stats dropped by like, what, 10 points? So yeah, you do start to see a drop off there. If you're just casually Vindicta-ing and you're an Iron, who is maybe short on overload supplies or just kind of poor as a main account, I think you can get away with extremes for Vindicta, and it won't make too terribly much of a difference unless you're looking at it versus Elder Overloads. But honestly, extremes versus overloads at Vindicta, you're pretty fine just taking extreme doses and repotting every like 10 minutes, and you'll save a lot of supplies that way, if that's important to you. So that was a neat discovery I found that was worth it for me, again, as maining an Iron now. I have to start a new recording because I hit the wrong button on accident. Okay. Before we move on to the next boss, there's one important thing I want to note that is different in this boss versus the other 2. Actually, 2 things. So I am using a Reaper necklace here for a little bit of an accuracy boost versus Vindicta. Many of you will use an EOF, Essence of Finality. Again, Iron problems. I don't have well, no, I have the resources. I don't want to allot the time to upkeeping an EOF right now, so I'm using a Reaper necklace because it's easier to recharge. Number 2, I am using the Berserker aura at Vindicta. This is to get the maximum DPS bonus here, but for the other 2 bosses, they are poisonable, and I will be using a Blood Reaver. At Vindicta, I used a Ripper Demon. But at the other two bosses, I used a Blood Reaver for synergy with Cinderbane gloves, so for that reason, I stuck to melee, and I used the Vampirism Aura in order to leverage the healing from Vampirism and Soul Split, and what's the other one? The Scrimshaw Vampirism, yeah. That way the Blood Reaver can inflict the maximum amount of hits, and Poison can proc like crazy. So, with all that said, the next test subject is the Magister, and I chose him very intentionally. He is also a very fast kill, like Vindicta with this setup, but the main difference between the Magister and Vindicta is that the Magister has absurdly high defense. He is one of the bosses with the highest defense out there, I think, other than maybe 4,000% in rage, other bosses. But I specifically wanted to test on the Magister because even with my current gear and regular overloads, I splash a lot, more than on any other boss I've tried. So I was genuinely curious to see if Supreme or Elder Overloads could push my accuracy specifically over the top, just to the point where it makes a huge difference in fighting the Magister. So let's see what happened. Oh, wait, before we see what happened, one difference to note is that I am using an Essence of Finality here. Yeah, I do have one, I just don't like to use it a lot. But I found that I was getting my ass kicked really badly by the Magister with my melee setup. And actually, even though I'm leveraging the Blood Reaver synergy with Cinderbanes, I am using Protect Magic here in all these tests instead of Soul Split because he killed me way too many times using Soul Split. It's a little bit sad, but it's mainly that one hold still, stand still mechanic where he whacks you really hard and then he goes away and he hits you with a really big magic hit. Yeah, that takes off like 80% of my HP when I'm Soul Splitting, so it just didn't work out for me that way. So that's why Protect from Magic is used here instead of Soul Split. I switched to Protect Magic my like 4th kill into using regular overloads, and I saw that it didn't affect my times too drastically, so I kept those there, but yeah, that's just for transparency for you guys to know. So here's the results. They're a little bit funny, and I think I know why, but the takeaway is... Alright, there's a few takeaways. Elder Overloads made the biggest difference by far. Even more of a difference than at Vindicta, of about 5.5% faster kill times on average. The biggest difference to note here is that my slowest kill times were also drastically reduced when using Elder Overloads, not just my fastest kill times, and I did get record-breaking fastest kill times on Elder Overloads. And now I'm going to try to explain why Supreme Overload kill times were absurdly worse than regular Overload kill times. So, the Reaper Necklace here, or the Reaper Necklace effect when you're using an EOF, is huge at the Magister. I thought about it later, going back to these numbers, and I realized that when I was using regular overloads, I went through Magister kills pretty quickly, and I actually noticed that my Reaper Necklace stacks weren't totally gone between kills, so I still had like 20, 24 stacks each time I started a kill after the first kill. That made a big difference. With Supreme Overloads, I did notice later that I took my time more between kills, and my Reaper Necklace stacks went away, and so you'll see a lot of kills with Supreme Overloads that take a lot longer, like longer than 1 minute and 10 seconds. This is because I waited longer. Now, I also waited a lot longer between kills with Elder Overloads, so I lost all my Reaper Necklace stacks between each kill. But the kill times were still much better than with regular Overloads. That is huge. That means that Elder Overloads, that little +4 attack bonus over regular Overloads, was enough to bridge a accuracy bonus gap that allowed for a lot more hits landed and a lot faster kill times. I was a little bit surprised, but a little pleased that I was proven wrong from my original hypothesis that Elder Overloads wouldn't make that much of a difference anywhere over regular Overloads. They do make a huge difference here. Again, this is a pretty not top tier setup, but still, it's tier 92 accuracy with a tier 88 offhand. You can get better accuracy by upgrading your gear to tier 95s or whatever, but still, your accuracy will still suffer even with the best gear at the Magister, and Elder Overloads, it looks like, will push your accuracy over the limit to where you can land a lot more hits and kill him much faster. So, I was actually pretty pleased with the results here. One other thing I'd like to say about the Magister and the varying kill times, in that there is a lot of range, I guess, between the fastest and slowest kill times I have here. My kill times at the Magister are very dependent of which random mechanics he chooses to use. There are some mechanics that just waste your time more than others. He could use his healing mechanic a little more, he could use the stun one and then run away and I have to catch up to him and barge him or something. anyways, there are a number of mechanics you can pull off that waste your time, and my fastest record-breaking kill times here were the kills when he used the least of those mechanics, so a lot of the times also vary in that way. Moving on to, last but not least, Kerapac in normal mode. Now, full transparency, I expected this to be a lot harder than it actually was. It turns out this was a much easier fight than even fighting the Magister, because the last time I did Kerapac was on this account when I was using Animate Dead and did not have Greater Concentrated Blast yet, and I was grinding towards Greater Concentrated Blast. So, it was impossible to skip the lightning walls and all that stuff, and I was struggling to get like 4.5 minute kill times. And I didn't realize how much I have upgraded my melee setup since then, and didn't realize that, yeah, no, I put him in his place. I put him straight into the ground, so far he went to the center of the earth. I smashed him so hard, it was an absolute mockery, and it was just sad, so... this makes me think that maybe I could have tried this with hard mode Kerapac, but I'm not practiced in that yet, so I didn't bother yet. Anyways, my kill times here are much faster than 4.5 minutes, and skipping the lightning walls was an absolute joke. So I give all this preface just to say how wowed I was, and because a lot of you might thinking this is still a fairly easy boss to test on for this kind of test. So yeah, I expected this to be a lot harder. But here we are. So here are the results. They're pretty straightforward. These results kind of follow the pattern of Vindicta's test results, where things get gradually better versus regular overloads. Actually, Supreme overloads technically performed a smidge better, like 0.1% faster kill times on average. A big takeaway here is that a big factor in the kill times here has to do with how consistent I was able to be in my rotations, and how consistent I was in pulling off Berserks at the right time, how consistent I was in using the time warp mechanic the same way for each kill. Again, like I mentioned earlier, I was able to do this pretty consistently for like 90-95% of kills, but there are some kills where I screwed things up. And some of those kills ended up with my fastest kill times, some of them ended up with my slowest, so there is, with a boss like Kerapac, there is variability in how your rotation will go. So honestly, that had much more of an impact in kill times than the overloads or Elder overloads or Supreme overloads. This is a boss that I also wanted to test because his defense bonus is also fairly high relative to other bosses. Not the highest by any means, but still up there, enough that I thought maybe different overloads would make a difference. It looks like they do. Again, over the course of 10 kills, both Supreme and Elders performed noticeably better by a little bit than regular overloads. Now, another reason for not doing hard mode Kerapac, aside from just it would take way too freaking long and I'd have to practice a lot and I have really no interest in it, is that, at least according to the wiki, his defense bonus is the same in normal mode versus hard mode. So the percentage increases in performance you can see here should carry directly over, more or less, to hard mode. Again, I think it's worth saying that in this case, your skill and how you pull off your rotations consistently for the best damage is a lot more important than which overload you use. And I think, to be honest, the reason that Supremes performed a little bit better than the Elders is that by the time I was testing the Elder overloads, I was already tired from testing Kerapac. At least with Vindicta, I still need Aftershock components, so I had a reason to do that, and the Magister is kind of fun, but I have really no interest in continuing to kill Kerapac, so I kind of got comfortable in a rotation for the Elder overloads that maybe wasn't better, or maybe was a little bit worse than I was doing for overloads and Supreme overloads, so that's another factor. It's not too big of a difference in rotation, but again, just to say that your skill and ability and comfort with this boss are a lot more important than the overloads used. Okay, those are my test results. Now, what do we do with this? Let's analyze a little bit. According to my results here, my original hypothesis that it's okay for me to be lazy and use overloads, regular overloads for everything, is correct in many cases, but not in all cases. So the entire point of this video was to show in which cases it is better substantially to use Elders over regular overloads. I'm going to knock Supremes out of the equation because I think there's a reason that nobody ever talks about them, that they don't do quite enough to give you much benefit over regular overloads, but Elders do push things over the limit in some cases. So for most bosses where your gear plus an overload gives you enough accuracy to hit pretty consistently, like 95% of the time, you don't really need an Elder Overload. Your kill times will increase exactly proportionally by the smidge of damage bonus you get from the Elder Overload versus the regular, which is not much. But I think the most important test subject in this video was the Magister with his absurdly high defense bonus. Because there are other bosses out there that are a little bit too complicated for me to test for this video that also have really high defense bonuses, and there are also some Slayer tasks that have very high defense bonuses, or Slayer creatures for tasks like, for example, Calgarian Demons or Irut. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but anyways. There are various non-boss creatures as well, is my point, that have very high defense bonuses, especially if you're trying to train a particular combat style, or you have more DPS in one combat style, and you want to use it even if your Slayer task is not particularly weak to it. Those are the cases where an Elder Overload will push things over the edge and make a substantial difference in your kill times. It does look like the accuracy bonus, the little +4 over the regular overloads, can have substantial impact. Yeah, again, the Magister is primary evidence of this. I was a little bit wowed by how much my accuracy sucked with regular overloads and Supremes until my Reaper Necklace boost caught up and got all its stacks, versus how it didn't really matter all that much with Elder Overloads. So those are the cases where Elder Overloads are much better. Now, you guys might know better than me. I know there are some bosses with enrage mechanics that increase their defense as they enrage. Please correct me on this, or generally speaking, if you've personally found cases where Elder Overloads make a huge difference over regular overloads, please comment and let us know. It'll help everybody out. And if you found the difference in particular Slayer tasks or other creatures as well, please also comment. Furthermore, if you enjoyed this type of video and if you would like to see more of either just generally helpful guides for RuneScape things or more testing videos like this, I really enjoy making this kind of thing, and I have some ideas for future testing videos. Please comment additionally if there are particular things that you would like to see tested. And please consider liking this video if you enjoyed it and subscribing. It helps me out a lot and it helps me devote more time to making videos for you guys if I can get a bigger user base here. So thank you. If you're still here and you've watched all the way through, I appreciate you very much, and I'll catch you in the next one.